Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my video. Alright guys, let me tell you guys how I fixed my car the other day. So I was out of the park, did a 1 hour jog, came back to my car, ready to go home, try to start it. It cranked, but it did not turn over. It kept on cranking, but it did not turn over. And I must have tried to crank it at least, I would say like 15 times within the course of me trying to figure it out, what the problem was. All right. So I'm like, okay, what could this situation be, considering I did change the battery up. I changed the battery maybe 2 months ago. It's got a brand new battery. It's not the starter. I know 100% it's not the starter. Obviously, it cranks. The starter cranks the car. It cranks. So I'll rule out the starter. Everything having to do with the starter, ruled out. And basically, it was a strong crank. So I was pretty sure it wasn't the battery. But just in case, I turned on the light. The headlights went out. See how bright they are, and they were pretty bright. So I was like, it probably isn't the battery. I was thinking maybe I had a defective battery, but I was pretty sure it wasn't the battery. All right, it wasn't a slow crank. It wasn't like, it wasn't a slow crank. It was a strong crank. But here's what I did anyway. I actually got my power pack, put it on, and try to crank it that way, just to make sure it's 100% not the battery. And it cranked. It wouldn't start. Did the same thing. Definitely wasn't the battery. And on top of that, I was looking around just to make sure that my terminals were clean and tight, because I did clean the terminals. I did tighten them up 2 months ago. I didn't think that it was going to be corroded after 2 months, and they weren't corroded after 2 months. So I was like, all right, okay, I know what the obvious is, but I'm going to go through these steps, just to make sure that I pretty much troubleshoot the easiest things, and then I'm going to go to, the bigger issues. So at that point, I knew it wasn't the starter. Obviously, it's not the alternator. I ruled those things out. You guys, in this situation, you guys don't want to start ruling things out as what the issue is. It won't be the starter. If it's a strong crank, it's not the alternator. If it's a slow crank, wait. If it's a strong crank, it's probably not the battery. If it's a slow crank, it's possible that it is the battery. But just to rule it out, you guys should probably at least try to give it a jump. This situation, just to make sure it's 100% not the issue. All right. So it's not a slow crank. It's a very strong crank, and it cranks up pretty strong. All 15 times that I try to crank it up. So I can rule out those things. Check all the terminals, rule that out. And the negative wire, I could rule that out too, because I wouldn't be getting a strong crank. Well, it's possible. It's possible that it could be the negative ground wire that could cause that issue. It's very possible, maybe. But I was getting a strong crank, so I was pretty sure that all the wiring were tight and good, and it wasn't with the negative or the battery or any of the other stuff. So moving on from that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe it's a fuse. Maybe it's a fuse, the fuel pump. Maybe it's a relay to the fuel pump. Maybe it's the fuel pump itself. Could be the car's computer, all of those things. All right, and I'm going to help you guys troubleshoot this because I troubleshooted it. All right, it's how I troubleshoot this whole entire issue. All right, you guys have this situation. This is how you guys troubleshoot this issue. All right, you guys have a crank, but it won't turn over. Here's how you do it. All right, maybe it's the car's computer. Now, I was not getting a check engine light on the car. I was not getting a check engine light on the dash. So I could pretty much rule out a whole bunch of things. All the sensors, all the things that be caused by the sensors, I could pretty much rule out. There was no check engine light. And I'll tell you guys what, when I actually, when I actually put an OBD2 on it, okay, when I put an OBD2 on it, first of all, it actually read. It ran through the scan, gave me a whole readout. So I knew that it was probably not the car's computer to begin with. That's very important. There are situations where the car's computer has issues communicating with the car itself, whether it's a wiring issue, whether it's a blown fuse issue, a short or whatever. Sometimes that occurs. And when that occurs, it will cause the car to crank but not start. All right, and there's a whole host of things I could run down with this, but I could rule out that. All right, and the fact that there was no check engine light on the dash, and then when I read the whole OBD2, there was not a single code that came up. I could rule out anything having to do with the mass airflow sensor, could rule that out. I could rule out the crankshaft, camshaft. I could rule all that out. And I could probably rule out the throttle position sensor on top of that. So if you guys are probably thinking it's probably one of those sensors that's causing it, one of those things that's causing it, if it's not coming up, if you guys don't have a check engine light with this with this crank but no start issue, it's a crank but no start issue, you guys probably rule out all those things that has a sensor connected to it, which is a whole host of things. All right, and this situation pretty much simplifies a whole lot of things as far as troubleshooting this issue is concerned with a crank no start issue. All right, so let's go down from there. All right, now I'll tell you what. All right, I wasn't able to get my car started at the park, so I had to call AAA, had them tow my car to my house so that I could actually do a bunch of tests. I didn't have my tools with me, so I wasn't able to get it started. All right, I assumed that it was a couple of things. So when I got home, I had to pretty much go through all the fuses. All the fuses were good. All right, all the fuses were good. So next up would be the relays. I assume in this situation that it was probably either going to be a fuel issue, like maybe a relay or a fuse connected to the fuel pump that would cause this situation. All right, so I tested out all the fuses. It wasn't that. As far as the relay was concerned, I did swap out the fuel pump relay with another relay, with a similar relay, with the same exact number. So I did swap out one of the relays for the fuel pump relay, and that didn't do anything as far as that situation is concerned. So at that point, I was thinking, all right, I got to figure out whether it was the fuel pump that was causing this situation. All right, definitely was sure it was not the relay. And on top of that, I actually took off the line for, the part of the fuel line just to see whether there was any fuel getting pumped out. There was no fuel pumping out. And on top of that, I actually did not hear the fuel pump prime. All right, when I turned it on to the on position, did not hear any kind of priming coming from the fuel pump. So at that point, I knew that it was probably the fuel pump that was the issue. In fact, it was the fuel pump that was the issue. Now, I was hoping that it would have been the fuel pump relay. If it was the relay, it would have been a quick fix. However, since it was the fuel pump, it took an hour or two for me to replace it. Got the car to start afterwards after it was replaced. It was the fuel pump that was the problem. If you guys have a crank no start, like a whole bunch of other scenarios, no start scenarios, what you guys do need to do is, you guys need to troubleshoot it, because it could be, like I said, a variety of things that would be causing these kind of situations. Hopefully, if you guys are in the same situation, this video has helped you out in some way. Maybe it's a fuse that was blown or something like that. Hopefully, you guys got a simple fix for you. But that was my whole entire the whole entire scenario happened because the fuel pump needed to be replaced. All right, guys. If you guys have any comments on this, please drop a comment in the comment section. Please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe, guys. All right, take care.